I'm still trying to get signed in.
We've got 2 minutes to eat, Ben.
Okay, we're on.
Good evening and welcome to the Jungle Chasers show where we talk about all things weather and many things amateur radio. I'm Patty, KD08EL, and with me I have Steve who's managing our video. I don't see him on here yet.
I don't have my camera turned on.
Okay, KA0SPM. Rodney, wave Rodney, K0FZ. And Franklin, KD0RSJ.
Hey.
Hey. So there was a question before I do the presentation tonight. There was a question, did we want to do any debriefing on the storms that came through over the weekend? It was quite the weather weekend in the Ozarks. Was there anything on the nets that needed addressing?
I don't really think so, because I got in on posting on the pages the very tail end of Sunday night, and then I monitored for several hours on Monday, kind of Monday morning, and then the evening part. That was more exciting than anything that I had done before then. Kind of like what you, I think, had mentioned earlier, the person really to have probably asked about Sunday was probably Lewis.
Okay. Only one incident was brought to my attention, and we evidently had someone who was drunk who was hyperverbal and not real intelligible who joined in. Names.
Oh, no, wait. Okay, yeah, actually, I know what you're talking about now. I heard about it after the fact.
Okay. So, yeah, I heard about it after the fact as well. And there wasn't a repeat on Monday. I've got to get with Pat, and we will be discussing a letter that will be forthcoming. But Lewis being so much closer to the repeater, he told me that he just basically started talking because he knew he'd talk over him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I've had a few other people doing the same thing before in the past, and.
Yeah, because if you can't get their attention and tell them, we're active here, you need to back it off. Yeah, if you're closer to the repeater or have more power, that's the benefit of having a repeater. Because you can make use of that. So, or if you're further away, like if Teresa had been trying to run the net, she could have hollered for somebody else who was closer to just take over. The person in question don't have any other than address, contact information for. So, there wasn't a phone call to be made. Anyway, so other than that, things seem to go pretty smooth from what I was told.
We didn't even have anybody sit on a microphone.
Wow.
And I didn't hear any of the APRS data.
So that's
now,
pretty amazing.
On the computer going, so I'm going to drop here for a second, and then I'll come back in.
Okay.
All right.
I'll have to get him situated.
Back in.
There he is.
So when are you going to get situated so we can see your beautiful face? You're hiding.
He is hiding.
I probably will do that a bit during this.
A bit?
Yeah, I've got to get my camera lined here. There.
There you
So
are.
I use a grabber for it's an analog video and audio for the 6.4. And so I see multiple cameras on Skype, and one of them has no input, so it's kind of interesting. But I'm only off in the corner anyway because of Skype.
Rodney, your dog's getting in on the show. You want to introduce your dog to us? Or is that the kitty?
Oh no, that's definitely a dog.
Yeah.
That's Charlie back there.
All right. Well, welcome, Charlie.
Say hi, Charlie.
I
She's-
have seen him before. What breed of dog is he? Is he some kind of a spaniel or like a Cavalier spaniel or something?
No, she is actually a
Okay.
Papillon Chihuahua mix.
Okay. Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking. Then maybe it was Papillon. For some reason, Spaniel came out because we were watching The Incredible Dr. Poole the other night, and they had on some Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, which are, they're maybe roughly about the size, maybe just slightly a little bit taller than a Pekingese. They're not as big as like a Cocker Spaniel or like a Springer Spaniel.
Check your audio levels there, Franklin. It's like distorting.
Well, and it could be because it's telling me I have a poor connection as well.
No, it just sounds like distortion. It's kind of strange.
Huh. Is it maybe audio too high?
Something's too high in the chain of between the mic and the Skype.
Okay, I turned my level down on the mic a little bit on the channel. Is that better?
Didn't seem to change it.
No, it's still crackly sounding.
Well, while you look at that,
Yeah, I bet you it's my connection. Let me drop this in and try again real quick.
okay.
So, Steve, you started to say while you were...
Yeah, well, while he's working on that, we do have some amateur radio news. This just came out today from the ARRL. There is a slight change to the field day rules in that Class D stations, which were the ones where you just sit at your house and do field day as a regular station. You were never allowed to contact other at-home stations. So any Class D station was off limits, but all the other ones were good to go. Well, for Field Day 2020, Class D stations may work all other Field Day stations, including Class D, for points. Which means that if I'm sitting at home doing Field Day myself, and Rodney's sitting at home doing Field Day himself, I can contact him and get points for that. Used to be you didn't get no points for it. The next thing in part 2, I guess, in the rule is that we can declare working from home as being a club station. So if we all want to work from home and go under the heading of Southwest Missouri Amateur Radio Club, all of our points will aggregate together just like a contest station would. So
like Route 66 on the air.
right, the only real change there is on scorekeeping. We would, if you're going to declare this from home, you can add the club name into the field, into the Cabrillo file that you upload, and then ARRL just adds them all together. So it's kind of cool in that if you just don't feel safe to go out, and I know there are some out there who don't, you can do field day from the house and still get points for your club that you have. So
Oh, that's cool.
I'm thinking the ARRL decided this because they want to up the participation level in field day. You know, now,
Well, they have to be all inclusive, and there's many states that are still locked down and plan to be for a while.
right.
And you have to add an element of fairness to it. And I see this as a reach in that direction.
Right. Now I know that there are a few hams out there who do mobile HF, and VHF too, and HF and UHF. You can do field day that way, and it's called Class C. Class C is sort of like emergency communications, so they always could communicate with everybody. But if you decide, hey, for one time I want to take off and go off in the middle of nowhere and do field day, I can do it as Class C, or in some cases you might be able to do it as battery power, which there's a class for that, but I don't remember which one. But it puts you in that
Can't remember.
where you still can benefit your local club, which is really, I think, very cool.
That is very cool. So for those people
yeah,
who
that
might be
is
watching
definitely.
that are weather geeks, and this is definitely amateur radio related, Field Day is an annual event where amateur radio operators all around the United States practice their readiness for any kind of emergency. And basically it's setting up, it traditionally is setting up in a public place or out in the wilderness to put stations together quickly, efficiently, and get on the air and start making contacts. And those contacts go on for 24 hours. So it's a big deal that we are somewhat homebound in many places in trying to accommodate that. So that's what we're talking about.
And interesting history on that. That has been going on since 1933. And so the idea is to prepare yourselves. Now, when I say 1933, that's when the ARRL officially did it. It's the encouragement to take your stuff out and practice for emergency communications. Now, here's the fun part. The Radio Society of Great Britain has field days, and so they're not the last full weekend of June, they're the first full weekend of June. So if you wanted to work a bunch of British golf number or mic number stations, they're going to be on that first full weekend. The Deutscher Amateur Radio Club of Germany is also the first full weekend of June for CW, but sideband is the first full weekend of September. Oh yes, we can work Germany from here. I've done it before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Greece does it. First full weekend of September. They have Australia has theirs in March. Korea has theirs. It kind of varies. Their Korean Amateur Radio League for 2 to 5 days at a regional branch area, so they don't have a specific schedule. New Zealand does it in February. And Taiwan has a biannual field day by the Chinese Taipei Amateur Radio League. So it's becoming a worldwide event.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting. It's really cool. So
It is exciting.
Cool.
but anyway, that's kind of a big set of news for us. That's a big change, and I'm positive that we're going to need to have a board meeting discussion about what field day is going to be. I know there are certain ones that are excited about a certain thing, but it may not be a good fit for everybody, so we can make it a good fit for everyone. I think that'll be cool. So, anyway, that's what I had, and I'll turn it over to who's next. Any news that anyone else has before we do our presentation?
I don't have any news, so moving on to Franklin.
I don't think I necessarily have any news. Hopefully my audio's maybe a little bit better. I switched routers, and that seems like it's not throwing poor connection up as much, and you guys aren't sounding quite as distorted as you were. But other than that, I'm just excited about the topic tonight. I think it's going to be something that a lot of people will get a lot of value out of. It's, of course, weather related, so I always like talking about weather and radios.
Most definitely.
I mean, I don't know if everybody else is hearing it, but he still has a little distortion. I mean, I don't know if switching his mic would help or what.
I can try that.
I was wondering if it might be the connection between the headset and the computer.
Well, I'm not going off of the headset mic. I'm going off of the desk mic, so I can definitely switch over here real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe unplug it and plug it back in or something. Maybe.
Is that any better?
Oh, yeah, there you are. Beautiful.
Okay. I'll just, it may be something with the connection between the computer and the mixer or something. So I'll just do this for right now.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great. Okay, well, if that's all you guys have for the moment, I did put together a little presentation to try to make an understanding of what products come out from the National Weather Service, from the Storm Prediction Center, so that people understand what they're hearing when they hear it. And this is very basic. And I'm going to try to tie it together in a way that people understand. So let me get switched here. Can you see my share?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So from the beginning, please. Here we go. Okay, watch, warning. What does it mean? And I will get into much more than just watches and warnings here. This breaks it down. We have products that are warnings, watches, advisories, and outlooks that come out from our local NWS offices. Warnings are weather hazards that are occurring right now. They do pose a threat to life or property, and this is a time to take action. Pardon me. A watch is a risk of a weather hazard that they anticipate will happen soon. This could pose a threat to life or property. This is when you have a plan and they call it a watch. You're watching for development of these storms. And so being prepared, having a way to get a warning, that's what the watch is about. An advisory is another weather hazard that is occurring, and it could cause significant inconvenience. So they're saying be cautious, be aware this is happening. An outlook is a risk of a weather hazard occurring in the next 7 days, and we'll get more into that with the SPC products I'm going to show. So it's a heads up. We'll have risks of severe weather that pop up in those, and it's like, well, here in a couple of days we have a potential for severe weather. So just be aware of that and watch for any watches that might happen on that day. Some of the things we might see. This is severe weather on this particular slide. Severe thunderstorm watches and warnings, tornado watches and warnings, flood advisories, watches, warnings, flash flood watches and warnings. And there's a difference. Flood warnings are high water. Flash floods are floods where it's rained heavily in an area and the water's going to pool up and rush into these low water areas. You'll have rapid moving water. it's not just a pooling of water, but it's actually a rushing of water. So these are some of the things we will see in watches and warnings. But in addition, we have winter weather that comes out with watches, freeze warnings, frost advisories, winter weather advisories. So a chance that we're going to have some winter weather that is going to be affecting us. A winter weather warning. Actually, the advisory is an inconvenience. Pardon me for slipping on that one. Catch me if you can. Um, so we've got some icing that may occur as a result of earlier rains or freezing fog. That might put, bring out an advisory. Winter weather warning: heavy snows, heavy ices, freeze warnings typically come out in the fall late when there's still crops out, and it would be a hard freeze that would kill those things. What else might we see? Heat advisories come out. It's that time of year again. Wind advisories, fire weather. We get red flag warnings where it's very dry outside. Don't we wish? They say no burning under a red flag warning. Significant weather advisory. These are sub-severe storms that probably would cause some inconvenience with heavy rain, continuous cloud-to-ground lightning, small hail, which can pose some dangers out there, especially if you're outside or driving. On a regional or national scale, here we get into the SPC or Storm Prediction Center risk categories. So we don't have anything in the next 7 days here, but let's just pretend day 4 we see a slight risk. What does that mean? It means that we have a potential on that day for short-lived, not widespread, isolated, intense, severe storms being possible. So let's go through each of these. There's an area around the risks. They tend to come out in bubbles of areas that are going to be affected. And so the outer layer of this would be thunderstorms. They have no label, really. No severe weather's expected, but expect lightning, flooding threats, and just general thunderstorms. These are the go to sleep because they're great to sleep to thunderstorms. Marginal risk. Isolated severe thunderstorms possible. They're going to be limited in duration or coverage or intensity. Marginal risk does not mean no severe weather. It means that we still have severe thunderstorms possible. Slight risk is a little more enhanced. Scattered severe storms possible, and they have a scale on these. For the purposes of keeping it simple, because that was kind of my intent tonight, I didn't get into the specifics, but these are short-lived, not widespread, isolated, intense storms being possible. So they're anticipating maybe extreme hail with this, say ping pong size or larger, 70-mile-an-hour winds. That might pop a slight risk. Enhance, numerous severe storms possible. More persistent, widespread, and some of these might be intense. So we're looking at maybe a squall line here in this part of the country, a squall line coming through with 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds, widespread hail, widespread wind damage, possibly some tornadoes. Moderate risk, even more widespread. This is long-lived. That is all hands on deck kind of weather. And then high risk usually comes with a particularly dangerous situation or a PDS. Long track tornadoes are possible with this. Long-lived storms of supercellular nature, typically when they pop a high risk in an area. We hope not to see those and don't see those very often. Tornado terms. They do the same thing with tornado risk, and I'm sorry for the quality of this. I couldn't find one better. So, marginal risk, isolated severe storms, brief tornadoes possible in that. And we're looking at, when are they going to pop a tornado watch, possibly, when we're looking at this. Slight risk is scattered severe weather, large hail, damaging winds, and isolated tornadoes. Enhanced is can't even read this thing. Widespread severe weather, damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes are likely. In a moderate risk, widespread intense severe weather, very large hail, strong tornadoes, damaging winds. What do they mean by strong tornadoes? Probably EF3 in nature, long track, not what we see on the squall lines that come through that spin up in EF0 or 1, but they're talking about very large tornadoes, very strong winds in those. A high risk, intense tornadoes. Let's think Tuscaloosa type event. That was a PDS or high risk day for tornadoes. Flooding does the same thing. The Weather Prediction Center has put this together, and they put out their own risks, their own risk factors. They also have a no area label. Flash floods not expected. Marginal risk is isolated flash flooding. Localized, primarily affecting places that can experience rapid runoff, much like we had here. Was it Tuesday or Monday when we had the flash floods in Greene County, and it was just Greene County?
I think we had some of that on Monday, but I don't think that it was just Greene County. Now, I know we had some kind of heavy rain one day whenever we were out, and I saw what I thought was like localized urban flooding when we were coming back from
That was
the
yesterday.
Super Center. I think that, yeah, I was going to say it was either Tuesday or yesterday, but I think that was yesterday because we were at the Super Center there at Kansas and West Bypass, and we came north on Kansas and just a little bit south of Mount Vernon. Mom saw an area that had standing water in it. Just past it was a large drainage I mean, I can't think of anything else to call it other than a canal. It's not really huge like you would think of a canal, but an extremely large drainage ditch that was within a couple feet from the top of it. I mean, it really looked like a little rolling small river going through the middle of town.
I imagine. There were several water rescues yesterday as well.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. Slight risk, scattered flash flooding, mainly localized. Most vulnerable urban areas, roads, small streams, and washes. Isolated significant flash flooding possible. So when I see a slight risk, our chances are, of course, much higher. But I think of a wider area being affected, say several counties or a portion of our watch area. Moderate risk. We're looking at a lot of rain or heavy rains coming in, like on a day like today, where we've had so much rain and everything's saturated, and we get these heavy downpours that can cause a flooding event. Douglas County went under flash flood advisory earlier, because they had some very heavy rainfall, and it just immediately raised all the small streams. The roads were starting to flood at the low water crossings. High potential. I'd never seen this issued from the Weather Prediction Center, but widespread flash flooding expected in areas that don't normally experience flash flooding. Mm-hmm. And this really puts lives in danger because you get in a comfort zone where, well, it never floods here.
Well,
We had
and
the
not
five-
only.
Go
Oh, I
ahead.
was just going to say, and not only that, but maybe construction, water runoff, storm drainage might not be designed to handle very much water because, like you said, it never floods here. We don't need to put that in place here. And then all of a sudden you get this deluge of water, and it's even compounded even worse because there's just not the infrastructure, I guess you would call it, to try to help take care of it.
Exactly. And yeah, and people are definitely caught with their guards down. There's two events that I can think of in recent past that affected Greene County in particular. One was the 500-year flood, and that resulted in several houses in our neighborhood being taken out by the city, and they took over the property. And one of them was a house that had been there since the 50s or 40s.
Gotcha. Do you remember about when that was?
Wow.
2004, 2005, I think.
Whatever the Amish took that blue house down.
Yeah,
I don't
think
remember
that's
the exact year.
I'm wondering if that was about the same time, because here on Patterson between Cherry and Chestnut, there's kind of a real low area, and they had 3 or 4 houses that flooded because that area floods real easily when we have a lot of heavy rain or we have rain for several days. And I think there was 3 or 4 houses they actually condemned and tore down. The people who used to live on the north side of us before we sold the house, their house was actually one of the ones that got condemned and tore down.
There was another event just a few years ago, and it happened in, well, there have been 2, I guess. Since I've had my license, I actually went to the OEM and helped with the phone banks on both of these. But one of them was just affected the eastern portion of the county, and it was in March, I think, and it rained so hard for 6 hours. There were streets that flooded that I've never known to flood, even in the 500-year flood. They were doing water rescues on Chestnut Expressway, on the eastern portion of Chestnut Expressway, not out toward 44 where they always do. There was actually a water rescue that took place around the corner from me, in the area where the houses had been taken out. That's a low area, and there is a dry bed creek there, and a lot of people don't realize it, but there was probably 4 foot of water in it. I was about an hour delayed, maybe longer, coming home from work that night because I was trying to find a route home. There was a video, and I wish I could have saved it, at Grand and Barnes, if you can imagine that corner where they took the one house out, and it's kind of up on a high bank. The water this was a flash flood, folks. This was class 5 whitewater rapids coming through that intersection. It was amazing.
One more real quick. I remember here, it's been within the last 2 or 3 years, I think, maybe 4 years. It was remember the evening that Steve Runnels likes to talk about every once in a while, where he's watching radar and the one guy comes by and says, "Do you think you should issue a flood watch, Steve?" And he's like, "Yeah, I probably should." And then, 20 minutes later, "Hey, Steve, do you think you should issue an urban streams advisory?" And he's like, Yeah, we probably should. And we had so much heavy rain. Well, the drainage ditches down by the house, I'd never seen them up and flowing over the road. I've seen them close to it, but not over it. It was over it, and I was trying to get out onto the south side of town to play D&D. So I get around finally to Glenstone, and I'm coming down the Glenstone Viaduct to St. Louis Street. All that whole bottom of St. Louis and Glenstone is probably all under a couple feet of water. I had never seen that before either.
Yeah. So those are the things that take people by surprise. And unfortunately, I don't know that the public gets it, that more people die in the Ozarks from flooding than any other weather event here. And I think they just don't have somehow programmed in that this is a serious situation. The attention tends to turn to tornadoes, and that I get it. Tornadoes are scary. Tornadoes can take away your world. Well, flooding can too. Um, I don't know what to do to get the public to understand. Don't drive into that water. You know,
I think it kind of, like you said on a couple things, I think it kind of is a false sense of security. It doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look that deep. That's not enough water to carry my car away. I mean,
how do
I've got,
you know that? Yeah, how do
I
you know that though?
but I think that's
You know?
kind of what the thought process goes through some people's mind. They're like, I've got a 2,000 plus pound car. That's not going to cause my car to run away or to be swept down river or the intersection. And they don't realize that as little as, I think, 12 inches of swiftly flowing water can raise and take off with a vehicle.
Right. And big vehicles, big 4x4s are just as susceptible. It takes a little bit more water for them, but if you think about your flash flood situation, you don't know what's in the water. So
you don't know what's in
you've got
water.
your big lifted 4x4, and here comes a tree sideways down the creek, and hit broadsides your truck and pushes you off the road. Then what?
And you think the road might be there. It may not be. It may have got washed away. And even though you can see or feel road asphalt, you don't know what's underneath that. Sometimes that gets water, that swiftly flowing water will get channeled, and it will actually bore underneath roads, and that dirt or bedrock that concrete and asphalt is laying on top of, all that may have got washed away, or enough of it that whenever you go over, it's going to give, and then you're flowing on down with the water.
Exactly. Water's powerful.
It is.
And I'm going to challenge this group, since I put together this one, I'm going to challenge this group to put together some presentations on what can happen in specific severe weather events. And flooding is a great one. People would be amazed at the power of what water will do. And there's a number of videos out there that demonstrate just what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge, guys. And got a couple more slides here. Tornado terms. We're kind of familiar now with watch and warning. Watch means that I'm going to go back. Steve said there were no cupcakes in this presentation. Here's your cupcakes, honey. So I'm going to give two ways to remember the difference between a watch and a warning. So a watch means you've got your batter ready, okay? All the ingredients are in the bowl. They're stirred up, and you putting them in the muffin cups, or you're putting them in the cupcake cups. They're not in the oven yet. A warning means the cupcakes are ready to come out of the oven, and that all those ingredients have come together. They've cooked, they've congealed, and boom, you've got a severe storm. I'm going to take this a step further. So look at the size of the words. A watch is a small word. A warning is a little bit bigger. Emergency is even bigger. So that's how you can kind of divide out what is noteworthy. They're all noteworthy, but the warning means take cover now. An emergency means you should have already, you burned the cupcakes.
So are you saying that if the Weather Service uses big words, we're in trouble?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the first tornado emergency that was issued, if I recall this correctly, was done by James Spann down in Alabama. and it was in regard to a very large, very destructive tornado in a large urban area. And that's typically, this is a strong, violent tornado that has a debris ball on it, which the radar now picks up on those debris balls. And this is take immediate action, don't wait. It's the same as a warning. You need to take cover, but the emergency means this is confirmed. So, here's the steps that get it to us. The forecast. Severe storms are possible. Not everyone will see severe weather at their specific location every time it's advertised. Okay? They say, oh, the weatherman's never right. Well, think of it this way, guys. Our weather service covers 37 counties. A lot of things can happen in 37 counties.
Well,
So
and also
not-
particularly if they say scattered or isolated, that should also kind of clue you into, not everyone's going to see this.
Right. But if it's isolated severe, they have no capability. It would take a magic wand to say, so Seligman's gonna get it,
Yeah.
and Boss is gonna get it, and Licking is gonna get it. No, they can't pinpoint those specific. Weather just doesn't play that kind of game. Our technology has not reached that point. They can't predict like prophets. They can give you a general forecast to go by.
Yeah.
So
And they
those are
might be able
limitations.
to, within an hour or so, they may be able to say, okay, here's where the storm is now, here's where it's probably going to go to. But even then, there's so many variables that could change almost on a minute-to-minute basis that could change that track, that track might end up being 20, 30 miles to either direction than what they thought it was going to be 30, 45 minutes ago. It's
Right.
just like
you're
you
talking
said,
about warning, and I'm kind
Well,
of still
yeah.
on the I'm still
Sorry
kind of on
about
the
that.
forecast. That's okay. I'm still on the forecast. So you hear Ron Hurst on the TV, or you hear Jamie Warner or Elise Sarafa or any of those great
Don't forget
meteorologists
Doug.
we have in this town.
From Channel
Don't
7.
forget. Oh, Doug Hetty. We can't forget Doug Hetty. So, a forecast, they'll let you know. Pay attention, stay up to date, have an app on your phone that's reliable, that will give you warnings. And they try to get the warnings out so that you get them in time to take cover. A watch comes out usually before there's any severe weather in the area. I say usually. There are exceptions, but typically the Storm Prediction Center will go into conference with a local office, and they develop the watch, and they develop the counties that they think are going to be affected by the watch. This gives you time. Say you're in a place that you're not usually and you don't have a specific plan. This gives you time to get a plan of action in place. And that includes communicate with your family, let people know where you're at, if you're traveling, where you're going to be. But be prepared to take action should a warning be issued. And then the warning is don't delay, take the action now. And I'm going to give a little education because this has been around since 2007. The Weather Service changed how they issue warnings. For years and years and years, they were issued for an entire county. They don't do that anymore. They issue for a specific part of a county or portions of counties. So it's important to know where you are in relation to the other cities and what cities might be affected by the warning. If there's a warning that's affecting Galloway and Battlefield, it wouldn't necessarily be affecting Walnut Grove and Ash Grove. But it might affect Stratford and Fairgrove depending on the movement of the storm. Mm-hmm. So it is important to know where you are in relation to the storm and if you are actually under the warning. And if there's warning in the area, be especially mindful because they might issue more.
True.
So I left spot here for questions, and I don't know if anyone's actually minding the store, so to speak.
I am watching the chat. I've not seen anyone post any questions.
Okay.
I think Steve, or at least
I'm
Steve
on
was
there,
in there
yeah.
too.
I'm
Yeah,
on there
you
as well.
don't see anything.
No.
Okay. I was just wanting to make sure I'd switched over from, because it starts off like top chat, and then I switched over to live chat. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything.
All right.
So
That's what I got, guys.
That was a great presentation.
you were talking about something that's sort of in addition to the warning polygons that, and when we've done previous severe weather coverage, you see the little square boxes or little whatever shape they are, and they'll change. They don't stay the same. Now, if you just listen to the warning radio like 162.4 here in this area, you're not going to necessarily see that taking place, but they'll describe an area where they're going to be, where there's a warning. But if you've got an application, if you've got a something going on, you know, that shows the polygons on a computer or something, they're going to move, and they're going to move often because they're staying pretty up on it more. Well, an example of that, the 1983 tornado that hit Morningside, they blew the sirens in the whole city for the night. I mean, I swear they were going to have to rebuild a couple of them because they ran all night long. And we didn't have a tornado anywhere near here, but it just frightened the public for no reason. So...
Right. And then I think that's what set them up for the problems of people not being attentive. It's like, well, it never hits here, so why should I pay attention? And
they blow the sirens all the time, right?
Yeah. 1983, when the tornado hit, was that the one you were talking about?
Yeah, it came across Morningside and
Battlefield. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. We're talking about the polygons and how they move. We've actually got a warning going down on the Gulf Coast. And you can see in this, the warning, the polygon is moving with the warnings. They actually, during this scan, one warning drops, but a new one pops up. That's why I say know where you are in relation to the storms, and if there's warnings in the area, it's possible you could go under warning too, because these storms do this like developed right on top of I-37 there, didn't it? Just north of Corpus Christi. So I don't know that they're under a watch, but I know that they were in a slight risk area for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So they're experiencing winds possibly to 60 mile an hour and 1 inch hail. So,
yeah, and I kind of like the polygon method that they use now. I mean, the whole county is good, but kind of like what you said, you know, if the storm's more on the western the eastern or say southeastern corner of the county, there's really no need for the western half of the county to really be under that warning. So it kind of narrows it down a little bit, and like you did say, it does predicate on you kind of knowing where you are in your county, where you are in relation to some other cities and areas. But I think most people, or at least I would hope to think most people, would have a general idea kind of what's around them. Kind of, am I in the middle of the county? Am I on the west or the east side? Am I in one of the corners? And kind of, you know, with the ideal of, you know, a directional part of the county and maybe one or two other cities, they would have an idea, okay, where that storm is in relation to them. If it's going towards that town and I'm in between there and that town, it's probably going to hit me too. I just kind of seem to like that kind of narrowing it down more.
Something new this year too, and I caught it on a scan the other night. They are issuing new moving polygons. What we just saw, the polygons were staying in one spot and one just disappeared and another one appeared.
Here.
But I did notice the other night when there was some weather in the area and I was like recovering from a bad weekend, I was watching the radar and kind of listening to things, and there was a polygon that kept shifting. And part of it would disappear. It was the same polygon, but part of it would disappear and then more would appear. So they've got the moving polygons are active on the radar now.
Was that local or was that in another area?
That was local. That was in one of our counties. Yeah.
That was Greene County that did that.
I hadn't caught that yet.
Because the storms were going from south to north.
Yeah.
Now, see, I had kind of wondered, because I saw a little bit of a video about that here a few months back. Does that mean that they are going to be more frequently issuing new updates on those? That was what I was kind of wondering from a net control standpoint.
That I do not know.
I haven't noticed that they have.
I haven't noticed that they are, but we haven't had a widespread event. We haven't had long tracking storms. What we've been experiencing with this low pressure system that has been stuck on top of us forever is an odd pattern of storm movement. Southeast to northwest or due south to due north. And these are very short-lived severe storms. They still are dropping water. They're still dropping some hail, just not to a severe level. And then they become a flood event. So I guess that's yet to be put to the test. It is very new. I can't remember, it was like February, maybe January, when I posted that article that they were going to be doing that. So, and I haven't talked to them about that.
Gotcha.
But if you have a radar app on your phone, you'll probably be seeing those changes as well. As a spotter, if you've got radar scope, and you turn on your locator on your phone, you can press the little round circle and it will show you your exact place and you can see where you're at in relation to the incoming storms. That's a great app for a spotter to know when to move.
Oh yeah, I like that on radar scope. I even use it sometimes here at home during net control. I wish you could turn on that location on the desktop version of radar scope. For whatever reason they don't make that available. I'll just pull it up on my phone.
You have to have GPS on your computer.
And then whenever after a minute or two it reports it to Spotter Network, and then it pops up on my map on the desktop, so I can just keep track of where my general location is in reference to the storms coming through Springfield.
You have to have GPS added to your computer.
Yeah, but see, I still don't think that would have to be 100% the way, because like stuff like Google Maps, they triangulate it through your internet connection.
Right.
But I don't know.
I don't think these radar apps do that, because I know that WSV3 also, it's got, if I decide to add GPS to my equipment, I can add that to it. But and I think Spotter Network, their stuff had the same thing, but you have to have that GPS capability with your.
Maybe that's it.
They're a lot less expensive to have a USB GPS. I mean, it used to be it was $100 to get something to add GPS to your computer. Now it's like between $7 and $40. Depends on what you want to spend. They're not
That's not
expensive.
too bad.
Rodney, you're quiet tonight.
Hey, I'm just taking it in. Hey,
Probably like me,
I
don't
mean,
have a
he's
whole
just-
lot of new stuff to share.
He's
Yeah,
just
well, I
listening
mean-
for his name.
yeah. I only respond when I'm spoken to, right? But no, I mean, it basically. I mean, in retrospect, there's a lot of people. You know, even when I was younger, everybody would say, you know, better watch for the storm. Watch for the storm. Look, they never even realized that a warning was a warning. They just always knew, oh, well, if a watch means it's happening, let's go watch it. You know, I mean,
Right.
and that,
There's still some
and
people
still
that
there's a lot of
believe
people
that.
yeah, there's still a lot of people that are that way. You know, and if we could do anything in this channel is to just educate people so that they are more, you know, prepared for that kind of stuff. And I think you did a very good presentation on trying to explain it. And, you know, the analogy of the cupcakes, you know, we've used it in many other episodes, but I mean, if it helps you to remember, there you go. That's bottom line. People goes, oh, you know, it's raining cats and cupcakes, you know, it's just one of those.
You know, I really like
We
it.
have
It's
cupcakes.
it's a great analogy because the watch is the potential to become something. It doesn't mean that it's storming yet, but it's got that potential. That cupcake batter has the potential, but until you do something with it, it's not going to become cupcakes.
And,
And
in
then
a capped environment,
Mhm.
somebody forgot to put the baking powder in, and you
Ah.
don't have cupcakes.
Right,
you
because
don't
they
get
won't
enough
rise.
lift.
They won't. There's no lift.
There's no lift.
Either that, or it was a recipe that required baking powder and they put baking soda in instead of the powder, or they had to have both and they just put one or the other. But then you
It
get
is
into
that
baking
they went-
science.
Yeah, and you just
No
have a
lift.
bunch of flat cupcakes that don't amount to
You have
any.
pancakes. You don't have cupcakes.
Pancakes. There you go.
So I want to make a call out to a video that Patty and I watched, and this is not something that you'll find on YouTube, I don't think. I found it by typing the words Mr. Tornado into Google, and
It's on PBS.
it's an American experience. It's an hour show about, and let me see if I can do it, Tetsuya Theodore Fujita.
There you go.
And, you know, I was wrong. I thought he was the first storm chaser, tornado chaser, but technically Benjamin Franklin was that.
He chased a whirlwind into the woods. It's documented.
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah.
I was just going off of the kite deal. I was like, I think that's good enough to be a storm chaser.
Well, yeah.
But one of the things that it shows is the primitive and I'm going to say determined Ted Fujita, what he went through to come up with what we all kind of take for granted. Like he was the one that named it a wall cloud. He's the one that named it a collar cloud, which we never talk about those. But
Pedro Tank talks about the horseshoe. No, that was Skip Talbot talked about the horseshoe, and that's what they mean by the collar cloud.
right, and we also call that inflow a beaver tail, but that's not. He just called it a tail.
Tail cloud. Yeah.
But believe me, you watch the show, you'll be like, "Oh my God, this is cool as ever." I did not realize all of the cool things about him, and what he had to go through to. He actually survived atomic bombs, and he probably wouldn't have been with us if they'd have hit
Really?
the target they were sent to hit weather's obscured it, so they went to the secondary target, which was Nagasaki.
Interesting.
And so it's just an amazing dude. Passed
He
away
was
in
not a
96.
meteorologist originally. He was an engineer, which is kind of interesting. There was a lot of pushback in the scientific community with the things he was coming up with. He actually was the one that identified the mechanism of a tornado. He identified the mechanism of a downburst. He identified downbursts where they'd never been identified before. They knew they had planes coming down. One plane would go down and everybody else was fine, and they didn't understand what was happening.
The
That was a
microburst.
struggle. Yeah, the microburst.
Yeah.
He brought so much to our awareness of weather. The man was phenomenal and passionate and driven, and we have a lot to be thankful to him for. Doppler radar was his friend, and he used it in his studies. Yeah, you got to watch the show.
You said that was available on PBS Online.
Yes.
That's where I
Okay.
saw
Cut.
it. But it's an
And if
American
you're
experience.
If you're
show.
on the Spotter Network page, there's actually a link to it
Okay.
on one of their posts on Facebook.
Because, see, I had set an alarm on my phone to actually watch it whenever it aired. Was it last week or the week before? And for whatever reason, I missed the alarm, and I completely missed the whole show.
But it's on the internet, so.
Cool. I'll have to go and watch that then.
And the other, I suppose, big news is Pecos Hank had a video. Whenever he releases a video, that's always exciting for me and Patty. And he did sprites. And that's well worth watching. I
have
first saw
seen
about those
Sprites
in a PBS special where they actually saw them from an aircraft and proved that they existed. And apparently there's a couple of researchers that have some extensive footage of them, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Better than fireworks.
I was at a 4th of July celebration. Well, kind of. A friend of mine and I didn't want to fight the crowds at Cessna Stadium in Wichita. And so I got permission to watch the fireworks because we were just down the road from there at where I worked. And so we sat in the back parking lot of the little hospital I worked at to watch fireworks. Well, this line of storms was going through up by Salina. Now, understand Salina is 90 miles due north of Wichita. We could see these storms. It was amazing. That's a very flat part of Kansas through there, but not, because you also have the Flint Hills in there. But these, I guess, were high-based storms. So what it wound up with, we're looking this way for the fireworks, and we're going, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. The sprites were red and blue and green, and it was just absolutely amazing. And I don't know what was better, the fireworks show or the
Or the
Mother Nature's
lightning.
fireworks show.
Well, that happened
yeah.
to us twice. We went down to Rockaway Beach for the fireworks, and then on the way back, and there was a full moon on the 4th of July, which is amazing. And we get up on top of the, Rockaway Beach is down at a big bottom. Well, you get up on the top, and all of a sudden we were faced with a giant thunderstorm to the north that's lit up with a full moon. And I'm like, oh, we got to stop. We got to stop. I wished I could have filmed that the way I saw it, because it was amazing.
Not necessarily like either one of those, but there's been a couple times, mostly around hot 4th of July, that you might be seeing some fireworks, and a couple times way off in the distance. see a little bit of some flashes here and there of lightning, but not anything quite as impressive sounding as both those situations.
Yeah, those sprites were amazing, and I don't, if I ever live to see them again, I hope to have my camera on me, because, wow, just
You got to do
wow.
video or you'll never catch them.
Oh yeah,
Because they're just
Have
like
to
a
be video.
real quick. You almost look like you've got them going on behind your head now.
But if you almost, there was no lightning in that storm where we were.
Yeah.
There very little, and yet where we were positioned when I took that picture, the town that was Lockwood, right? Lockwood got nailed. They had trees down everywhere, power lines down everywhere.
Yeah.
Just not a lot of lightning generated in that storm.
When we ran from that, we were going the same speed that the dust on the road was going. And it was close to 60 miles per hour. That's how fast the outflow of that storm was. And we held our position until I'm like, we gotta go now, or we're gonna get covered with this.
And it was more protecting the cameras than it was getting ourselves out of the way, I think.
And we were parked under a power
line,
line
went
too.
in the back seat on the tripod. So, yeah, this was that picture is actually the storm that went on to hit Branson.
And that was a chase on a whim too. Remember, we were up looking at the Phoenix Quarry, and
we weren't out on a chase.
We just made this decision. Hey, we need to go west. Did we go to Buffalo and eat on the square?
We went to Walnut Grove and up in that area. It was predicted to hit 100 degrees that day, and it was my day off, and it's like, well, we need to get out. We need to get out early before it gets so hot that our brains bake. And so we headed up toward Walnut Grove and Phoenix Quarry and all this. And while we were out, my phone buzzed, and it was a severe thunderstorm watch. It's like, what? That wasn't predicted. So we took off from Walnut Grove area and flew east to see if we could catch up with what was on radar at that point, which was a squall line that was going north to south across our watch warn area. And we got to 65 and decided there was no way we were catching it because it turned and started going southeast. So we from there went to Buffalo and ate at the Maple. We'll give them a plug. They have good food. And on my phone, I got into the model data and went, there's a triple point in Lockwood. we need to head that way. So we spent the next, hour and a half, 2. We went to Stockton first and caught the storm that went through there early.
Well, we caught this too. This early on, we saw it off into the north because it was coming from the northwest.
And it was warned. And so we stopped at the dam and got a good vantage point and then moved ourselves to the west of town while it rolled through, and then went back and did a quick damage assessment. There was none that we could find. And then went on to go on west to our original target. And it was kind of an interesting trek. We found sunflower fields and all kinds of things, but no place to set up until we found this little conservation area right in the middle of a bunch of farmland. And it was the perfect spot to catch this coming through. And we had a way in, we had a way out. And we actually made it back into town and positioned the car so we were headed into the storm as it rolled in. Cars are designed to take it, so if you're ever caught out if you can find a way to get off the road and get your car pointed into the wind, your car's aerodynamically designed for that. So we were safe, other than we were hoping.
Out away from power lines and crap that can fall over on you. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that day. You know, you guys were sending back pictures as it was coming from northwest down southeast, way before it even hit Springfield, and I was just like, yeah, we got something coming through, and I was doing radar, and I was doing a little bit of I think a Greene County net. I can't remember. I may have possibly been doing the regional net, but I remember when our power went out. I can't remember who it was picked up the net, but someone else had to pick it up because, I mean, power went out when the wind hit, and we were out to what, 11:30 that night?
Yeah.
We got
we
home
sat on
about
the
9.
porch that night.
We got home about 9:30, and it was hot and sticky, and the power had been
It
off
was.
for a long time. We opened up all the windows in the house and got fans going to try to cool it down a little bit, and sat on the back porch in the dark.
No fans. We had no power, baby.
No fans. We had,
Well,
no.
after the power came back.
After the power came back on. But we opened all the windows, and we were listening to and watching the city utilities trucks come through the neighborhood. We're on a main, and you know, generally we come back on pretty quick, but it was 12:30,
Yeah.
I guess.
If I'm wanting to remember right, I'm wanting to think that they had said on the scanner, because I was listening to the scanner at the time, that they had a lot of lines that they had to untangle in a lot of areas. I think they had to do some major rerouting, and that may have been one of the times that they had some poles that had got damaged, and they didn't have enough poles, so they had to actually have poles brought in from out of town.
Yeah.
And I think that's partially what took so long. I know there was one time we had a power outage because a transformer had blew, and for whatever reason Springfield had went through all their transformers and they had none, and it was like a 5-6 hour thing because they actually had to truck a transformer in from another utility company.
So here's a question for you guys. Can we have thunderstorms in a snowstorm?
Oh,
Yes.
come on.
It's called thunder snow,
Yeah.
and I've seen it just once or twice. There was one time I was staying out at my grandparents' house which is about 3 miles southeast of Stratford, kind of between Stratford and YY. And it was snowing a little bit. It was thundering, and there wasn't very much of it, but every once in a while there'd be kind of like this weird kind of faint greenish lightning.
That was transformers blowing.
Well, this was out in the country, and
Right,
but,
there's transformers out there too.
well, I know there is, but it was like it was up in the sky, and maybe it was just funny color cast or something, but
That's funny.
It's happened a couple
it
times here.
thundered. Yeah.
It's been, I can
gonna say,
remember
you
a
know,
couple times.
I mean,
It-
she's asking, can there be thunderstorms in a snowstorm? No, there could be thunderstorms and then a snowstorm, because I've seen that happen before. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, technically, the
Yeah,
thunder
that was
part
kind
comes
of a
from
tricky
lightning.
question.
It's not like you're
So-
going to have a supercell development during a snowstorm. That only happens in the movies.
So my aunt and uncle lost a barn to lightning and thunder snow. Typically, thunder snow is it comes with it extremely heavy snow and lots of wind. So, but they lost a barn to lightning. That was pretty amazing. I think that was like 1980.
we have a kitty cat.
We have Kitty. This is Minxie.
Ah. She's the kind of lovey-dovey one, isn't she?
Well, she's naughty.
Ah.
We've had an attitude adjustment. We call it a catitude adjustment.
Cat.
And now she's my lover.
Well,
Yeah.
I know there's one of your cats that always, and maybe she still somewhat smells remnants of our cats and dog off of me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just I smell good to her, but she always comes up and she's wanting to rub on my leg and she wants
That's
to get in my
Minxie.
lap. Yeah,
But don't
yeah.
you? And I always told you don't trust her.
Don't
'Cause
trust her. Okay.
she would do that and then bite you. But she doesn't bite anymore.
She's never done that with me, but I'll have to remember that and be careful.
Yeah, she doesn't bite anymore. We had about a year of trying to figure out what to do to break it, and because she was getting vicious with the biting, and we discovered that those emergency air horns are amazing deterrents for all kinds of cat behavior. It works a lot better than squirting her with water.
Well, see, with our cats, squirting them with water, if you could catch them, worked because they hated it. But yeah, the air horns, you wouldn't have to so much get within, like 6 inches and spray it right in their face. You could just
Works
point
anywhere
in
in
the general
house.
direction and let it go.
So the water bottles that I got back when we had two-tone would shoot 20 foot.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I could nail him across the living room when he was getting into stuff because he would knock stuff off shelves.
Mhm.
But the water just seemed to encourage her. She thought we were playing rough, and other things that we tried, she thought we were playing rough, and we wanted to play rough. And this, I think, has gotten the point across that it's behavior we don't want. And sometimes all we have to do is grab the can and she's gone. She stops whatever she's doing.
Oh, yeah. Titan and Miss Kitty got to the point where if they saw you grab a bottle, they'd go ahead and start running because they knew what was coming up soon.
Well,
And I think they almost kind of got to knowing that if they were kind of back in the kitchen area and if they went to that back living area and they jumped on my desk, they knew that I wouldn't spray them because I didn't want to risk hitting the computer or the radio equipment. So I'd shoo them away from there and they'd hop down and then I'd point the spray at them.
well, I think that we're at that point where we're reduced to cat stories. It's time to call it a night.
Yeah, it probably is.
So. Probably so. So Minxie and I. Oh, we don't like that. I'm sorry. Okay. we wish you 73 from KD08EL.
And wishing you all 73s and a great rest of your evening from KD0RSJ.
And I will say 73. This is Rodney from K0FZ.
And this is KA0SPM saying 73. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Jungle Chasers feed. If you like this content, usually we have an ad or something more weather related, but I think we're all kind of weathered out after all the rain. So stay tuned.
And make sure to hit that bell notification so that you get updates whenever we go live.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, good evening and 73 to everyone.
73s.
Bye.
Bye.
And there we go.